Hello everyone and welcome to Music Theory with Gim. In this installment of Analyzing Harmony, we're going to delve into the Giants theme from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask on the Nintendo 64. Before we get into any music theory, however, let's take a listen to the music. The theme is set in the tonality of D, with its mode being minor. In the first four measures, we hear a repeating progression of D minor to E flat major 9, with each chord receiving a full measure's duration. D minor is the 1 chord, and E flat major is the chromatic flat 2 chord. D minor appears in its triadic form, whereas E flat major has been extended to include both a major 7th and a major 9th. These extensions are not used like standard extensions resolving into the chord following, such as E flat major 9 progressing to A flat major 7, with D, the major 7th of E flat major, descending by step to C, the major 3rd of A flat major, and F, the major 9th of E flat major, descending by step to E flat, the 5th of A flat major. Instead, these extensions are the result of tones being carried over from D minor, specifically the 1st and 3rd of D minor, which are D and F. Retaining these tones across E flat major actually reinforces its role as a prolongation of D minor. Specifically, E flat major 9 is operating as a neighbor chord of D minor and is used to expand the tonic area. After hearing E flat major for a second time, the bass note E flat and the major 9th F move in contrary motion to E natural and D, respectively, forming E half-diminished, the 2 half-diminished. At this point, we officially depart from the tonic area and move into the subdominant area, but this lasts only briefly since the next measure brings us to the dominant area with A7 the 5/7 ending the phrase and forming a half cadence. Make note, however, that A7 does not initially appear as simply A7. Instead, it is embellished by its minor 6th, F, the modal 3rd of the tonality, which isn't released to the 5th, E, until beat 3. Also, in the final beat of the measure, the bass note A ascends to C sharp, and though this can be viewed as a change of position, making it a 5/6/5, I view this as simply being movement for the sake of movement and embellishment or intrigue, and not so much a structural change of position. As such, we're simply going to label this measure A7 the 5/7. After A7, we're going to move into the second phrase, which begins with, as expected, D minor, the 1. Rather than move to E flat major 9, D minor becomes D minor 7 over C, the 1/4/2. Like most chords voiced in third inversion, we're going to hear the bass descend by step. Rather than proceed to B flat, however, we're going to hear B, which has been harmonized as G major over B, the major 4/6. This descending motion is then continued with G major over B proceeding to B flat major, the flat 6. The progression of G major over B to B flat major can be viewed as forming a chromatic mediant relationship. In this context, however, it is not as boldly pronounced as a prototypical example, since the two chords are appearing as part of a goal of motion rather than having the chromatic mediant relationship used to prolong a given chord, such as B flat major being used as a neighbor chord of G major. And the goal of motion in this case is the chord following B flat major, which is A7, the 5-7. And like the first phrase, this chord will bring the phrase to a close, forming another half cadence. Rather than initially arrive as the true 5-7, however, the third and fifth chord tones are delayed by the cadential 6-4, sounding for an entire measure. When the 6-4 embellishments are released, they do so separately. The fourth D is released to C sharp at the beginning of the final measure, but F, the minor sixth, will continue to be sustained until beat 3, just like the final measure of the first phrase. And after this A7, we will hit the end of the theme and will be brought back to the original D minor. Now that we know how the harmony works when moving from one chord to the next, let's take a look at the structural design of each phrase and then compare the two. The first phrase is structurally a 1-2 half-diminished 5-7. And it uses the flat 2 as a prolongation of the 1. And the second phrase is structurally a progression of 1 flat 6 5 7. And it uses the 1-4-2 and major 4-6 as a way to embellish the descent from 1 to flat 6, and it also uses the 5-6-4 to embellish the 5-7. These chords of prolongation are really important both locally and globally. Locally, they provide additional intrigue to the phrase, but globally, they reinforce a sense of contrast between the two phrases. And this is easily seen if you pay attention to how the bass moves. In the first phrase, we hear D ascend to E flat, but this ascent meets resistance and E flat is pulled back down to D. On the second attempt, however, the bass breaks free and ascends to E natural, followed by an ascending leap to A. A then heads for D by leaping to C sharp, which then ascends by step to D. As a result, the second phrase will begin with the bass an octave higher than the first. It will then form an interval outline of a descending fourth from D to A, which is in direct contrast to the upward flow of the first phrase. And though I certainly have no idea what was going through Koji Kondo's mind when he was composing this theme, I can't help but think of how this theme is for the giants who are going to push up and resist the falling moon. So like the first phrase, beginning on a low D, the giants are going to push upward, and the moon, like the high D, is working its way down bit by bit. And with that in mind, as well as the rest of the analysis, let's take another listen to the giants theme and then bring this episode to a close. For those of you that are patrons, you can expect to receive a PDF containing the analysis present in this episode. I do not expect to make any additional commentaries on this particular piece, but if I do, you'll certainly gain access to those as well. Of course, as my patrons, it is encouraged that should you have any thoughts or questions regarding this analysis or the theme as a whole, reach out to me. For those of you that are not patrons but would like to support my endeavors, be certain to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below, and share the video as often as you can on social media platforms. If you find yourself wanting to take your support to the next level, hop on over to patreon.com/gim and consider pledging some coin. If you're not a user of Patreon or simply want to make a single financial contribution, you can do so via PayPal, the link to which can be found in the description below. These videos do take a lot of time and effort, so any support on your end is greatly appreciated. Either way, until next time, thank you for watching this episode of Music Theory with Gim.